Well, thank you so much for coming. You guys have a really, really important job this year, and we hope that we'll give you a lot of tools and skills and help you along the way to make this a good experience for you and for your mentee that you're going to be working with. So that will be a really good thing for you to help them out this year in many different ways. Our presenting team today is listed up here. There are several of us floating around. I'm Cynthia Vieira, and it looks like I've got an assistant, Amanda, till we figure out the clicker situation here. All right, we're going to get started with the connector first, and we want to kind of make sure our mindset goes into what we're doing today, which is talking about how to mentor, how to work with our mentees, what our responsibilities are with that. And for just about a minute or so, if you want to go ahead and take the top 3 boxes and just think about 3 words that come to your mind when you think of mentoring. And when you're done, if you'll put your pencil down, that will help me to know that you're ready to move on, and we'll have a little discussion about it. Go back down to the next part at the bottom. So you're going to share the words that you came up with, and they'll share their words with you. And then together, I want you to come up with one word that you think as a consensus really solidifies and brings it all together of what mentoring looks like. And it could be a word that you create from those words, a new word, or one that spoke to you from your list, okay? So if you guys over here can start and share your word and why you guys decided that was the consensus word for you.
Put guiding.
Guiding? Okay, sorry, I didn't make that clear, did I?
That's okay. Just, knowing that it's not just leading, it's not just observing, it's all of the above, just moving them forward.
Okay, and moving them forward is a lot of what we want to do this year, yes. All right, what did you guys come up with?
We put guiding.
Okay, and what was your reason for that?
Just because we've had it in common. Yeah.
You had it in common, okay. So you both felt that was important as well. Good, how about you gentlemen?
We put helping.
Helping, okay, and so what does that look like?
Assisting, guiding, being there for them.
Yes, and it takes all different forms. Yeah, helping looks different depending on what their needs are. How about you ladies?
Support.
Support, and what's that for you?
Sharing our knowledge, answering any questions they have, just supporting them anywhere we can.
Absolutely, and that is exactly what it will be about, and it will look different depending on the person you're working with, where they're coming from, their background and experiences, and so all of this will look different at different times for each one of us through this. So for our content objectives today, what we're going to do is help you to understand your responsibilities as a mentor. And this year you guys have a really, really important, it's always important, but it's even more important because it is a part of the licensure, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. The importance of maintaining a relationship with them, because that's how we're going to be able to support them if we can build that strong relationship. And then we'll implement mentoring language, which you're going to learn a little bit more about this after we're done with the session, and then utilizing the different tools for conversations and observations that we'll provide for you today and at your other trainings that you have. All right, how we're going to do that then would be through reading and responding about information in the handbook, and then through collaborative conversations that we're going to have today. Everyone should have a handbook at your desk. That's good. It takes me way back to the classroom. At your table, and then you also should have gotten an orange folder for your mentees as well. Good morning. And you'll need one of those for each mentee that you have. So if you have multiple people, then you'll want to make sure you have one for each of those people. Okay, and if you don't, just let us know and we'll take care of that for you. So we do want to make sure we have some norms today so that we can keep this moving along and be respectful of everybody's time. You guys gave up some of your time at school, and that's important, and we want to value that and respect that. And so some of the things we want to make sure we're doing is, of course, showing professionalism, and that's by participating actively in our conversations. We want to make sure that we share and that we listen to other people. And the most important one that we really want to make sure that we honor is that confidentiality piece. You may have some discussions this morning at future trainings about your mentees that you're trying to work through situations or figure out how to help them, and we want to make sure that that information stays here. We're not taking that back and sharing that in any kind of way. We want to make sure we're using that to help. You have an agenda on your table. It's a yellow half sheet there. We'll hear about mentoring language and observation and feedback. And then we'll also have a wrapping up session at the end. All right, so we're going to jump right into our notebook. This is kind of a guide for you. We want it to be a resource that will help you when you don't come to trainings and you're wondering, what am I going to do, or how am I going to help people, the people that I'm working with, hopefully this will be a good resource for you to use. We're going to start with the first section, and it's tabbed overview. So if you want to go ahead and open to the overview. You have a letter. I believe you got this from Amy Snodgrass. I think she emailed that out. If you haven't had time to read it, no worries. I'm going to sum it up for you here too. Basically, the key points in this is that we want you to kind of introduce you to this handbook, and again, use that as a resource to help you. There's a lot of great information in here that can help you if you have, a difficult time knowing what to talk about, or you forget what we talked about. Hopefully you'll come back to this, and it can help guide you through your conversations that you're having with your mentee. And then gives you some discussion starters too to kind of engage those conversations, and we'll get more into that in just a few minutes too. And then the other thing that's really important in here is it talks about email. Email is a great tool, and you'll probably use it, and that's perfectly acceptable, but we don't want it to replace one-on-one FaceTime kinds of conversations with our mentees as well, because that's a really important piece to building relationships and to giving them that time. It's harder to have a real conversation through email, and so it gives them that time that they need to get the information that they're seeking. The next page is about mentor program. Some of the things that we want to know, the goals of it, of course, are bottom line, we're all here to increase student achievement, okay? And so for this particular program, we want to get our mentees, our first year teachers, to a point where they can do that as well, because that first year is such a struggle. Sometimes that needs some support to make that happen. So we're going to be looking to do that and develop them as a teacher so that they can be as highly effective as soon as they can. Also gives them a forum for acquiring new knowledge. Someone said providing skills for them or providing resources that they don't know about. That's one of the things we're going to do for them. Establishing open lines of communication. We want them to have someone that they can go to, that they can get these answers, or feel like it's a trusted person that's not going to fly through everything or make them feel like they don't know anything, that's really going to take that time out that they'll need to feel supported. District initiatives is another one. You guys probably all are very aware that we have lots of district initiatives that we'll want to make sure that they get familiar with. And these are things that oftentimes they won't know already. And so we sometimes go in, not necessarily assuming, but it is an assumption that they know Ames Web or they know, whatever. But if they're coming in from out of state or from another district, they may not have any background knowledge on those things at all. So it will be important to kind of bring those things back that you're familiar with, that you do on a daily basis, and kind of be aware of that. Oh, wait a minute, maybe they need that support and don't know about that as well. And then we'll provide staff development opportunities for them as well. They'll come to NTI trainings, which are new teacher induction trainings that we provide for them, and they'll get more of that information and support there as well. Got this section called mentor duties there. Some of the things that are going to be important for you: communication on a weekly basis and documenting that, a minimum of 3 observations, and you'll utilize the calendar and checklists, which again we'll go over in just a little bit. And then you'll offer support in different ways, just like what you guys mentioned when we did the connector. It may be helping them lesson plan. It could be helping them to understand how to look at student data. It could be all different forms of support in that way. But the main things that you want to make sure that we're getting is that weekly communication and the observations. So that kind of leads into that change of piece that we all have is the KSDE program guidelines. The State Department has made changes this year, and so this mentoring program, this mentoring piece that you guys are doing now, is a part of the teacher's licensure. So right now, all of our teachers that you guys are going to be working with they're on an initial license, and in order for them to move to a professional license, they have to have this mentoring piece. So that makes this job that you guys are doing even more important for them to be able to have that next step to move to licensure. So we really, really appreciate you giving that time and giving back to the profession. And I was talking to someone a while ago about remembering that first year when you were there. Maybe a long time ago, and for me it was about 20 years ago, and I still remember it because it was so impactful and so stressful and so overwhelming that I didn't know what I was doing and we didn't have some of these things in place then. So having mentors and having peer consultants to support them and help them work through some of these difficult situations and get them comfortable is so important for various reasons. Okay. All right, so on the next page, if you'll flip back one more page, this is kind of the page with the Kansas State Department that explains all that. So if you will just take a highlighter in case you need to refer back to it. And these are numbered on the side, so this little box up here is 1, and then there's 2 and there's 3. So if you will highlight box 3 there, this is the part, if you're wondering what it is that you need to make sure that you're doing this year for your mentee, this is where you'll want to make sure you come back and take a look at. Okay, so again, just kind of reiterate the main points that will help them for their licensure, and these are kind of your bottom line guidelines. If you can do more, if you are willing to do more, that is fantastic, because some of your people may need more or less support, but this is just kind of the at least we must do these things. So again, communication on a weekly basis, and it can take different forms. It doesn't always have to be face-to-face, but we can't forget that that is an important part. You just can't have a real developed conversation through email very quickly, and sometimes what they need is to get something going is they need to have that sit-down conversation and work through things. Observations, it says virtual or in person. Most of you will probably be able to do in person. Virtual is like if you can't really get to them on a regular basis or something, but hopefully everybody can find that. So you're going to do a minimum of 3 observations of them this year. And then a system for mentor to provide reflective verbal feedback. And that's just how are you going to get some information to them if they need it. How are you going to give them feedback? And we're going to give you some tools today that will hopefully help you to have that system in place. The next page back is kind of the responsibilities and expectations. And so on this particular page, you can highlight bullet 4 or put a mark by it. Number 4 is an optional kind of a thing. Everything else in there is pretty much an expectation, but number 4, if you have, there's some people that are mentoring several people, and that might be something that you're not able to do for them, and so that you can kind of maybe lead them or guide them, but you may not go to the full extent of actually setting up observations for them. That one's optional, okay? But I'm going to give you just a few seconds here to look through this list, look at what the mentors' roles are and the mentees, and I want you to put a plus sign by those things that you feel like you're pretty comfortable with that are going to be fairly easy for you to implement. And then I want you to put a delta sign or some sort of an indicator about things that you really are going to have to be more intentional, because that's not maybe going to be something that's so natural for you. And just take a minute to kind of look over those and process what you might have to consider. And if you'll do that for both sides, because there might be something that stands out on your mentee side too. Go ahead and talk about and just pick that one thing that you feel you're going to be able to handle without any problems. That's going to be a strength for you. And what's that one thing that you really think that you're going to have to keep in mind as you're going through this? Okay? Go ahead and have a quick discussion, and we'll come back together. Okay. So does anybody want to share what their thing is that they feel is a strength? I'll just take one strength and one that they're going to have to really consider. What's a strength for you? You can just shout it out.
Mine is lesson planning.
Lesson planning.
Yeah, because we're on the same curriculum and stuff, so it's easier to collaborate and plan with them.
Perfect. So when you're on the same team, some of those things become easier or less of a challenge because they're right there with you, or like this gentleman said, the office is right next door or whatever, so that makes things easier. So what would be one that's probably a bigger challenge for some of you? Paperwork. Yeah. Say that one more time.
I just thought I have a new one that's in a different curriculum, so
Okay.
learn that.
So resources. And sometimes too, your resource is just knowing who to go to. It may not be that you have the answers for them, because I find that a lot when I'm out working with new teachers. I don't know all the answers, and I'm not going to pretend that I do, but I know who to go to that will have that answer, and it's kind of getting them to that right person or that right connection too. That sometimes is just knowing that limitation and figuring out how to go around it. That works too. And is it Carlos? Carlos brought up a point too that I want to make sure I mention too. You guys are coming from all different backgrounds, so we have a lot of diversity as far as jobs go. We have counselors, we have special ed, we have band teachers, we have all different areas of I'm sorry? Oh, so different challenges. That's exactly my point, though. Is there's all different. There's diversity in the jobs that we do, and so they're not all classroom teachers, or they're not all a certain type of a teacher that we're talking about today. So just kind of keep in mind. I'm going to speak in general as far as I'm just going to talk about new teachers, and so I know some of them are going to be counselors or whatever. So you might have to change your perspective and change your thoughts to match that or whatever. If you're having trouble with that, how does that work if I'm a counselor? How does that work if I'm, dealing with this or whatever? But so just kind of knowing that we might have to adjust our thinking as well. But just to keep it simple and keep it going, we'll just use teachers as our base for conversation. Okay. Okay. Yes.
So we need to put into the mentor log once a week?
Yes, and that will be something, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but you should have already started getting those from Amy Snodgrass. It's just a survey, and that's how you'll do it. It should be very, has anybody filled that out yet? Very quick?
Yeah, I think the My Learning Plan part of it's harder than the
Okay,
survey.
the My Learning Plan is only going to be if you're doing college credit and that very first training that you do. So the virtual one that you guys should have watched with your mentee, if you did that one, you're going to put that one into My Learning Plan. And then after that, if you're not taking college credit, it will just be a survey. If you are taking college credit, then you'll do My Learning Plan and the survey. All right, so the next page that you have is a little star guy. We call these star people. It kind of shows you some different parts of what it means to be a mentor. And those of you that work in schools, of course, know that your job is never just one thing. Especially when you're teaching, you become all different things to your students. And so you're going to take on many different roles as well with your mentees this year. And so you can see some of the different ones that you're going to do. Problem solver is probably going to take precedent right now. But what we hope to do with mentees is we really want to move them forward and out of that. So it's less of us figuring out things for them and getting them the tools they need to start figuring out things for themselves, okay? We want them to be independent thinkers just like we want our students to be. So if we always solve all their problems, they're never going to get there. So we really want to give them the tools, just like what I said about resources. Let them know who they can go to so that if they have these problems in the future, they'll be able to be a little more self-sufficient, where right now they don't probably know we have a print shop or someone who takes care of that particular job. So we do want to provide those for them at this particular time. Okay, but you can see it takes all different parts of your skills that are really going to shine at different times depending on where your person's at and what their needs are. But this is just a really encumbersome thing sometime to think about, okay, wait a minute, right now I just need to listen. They don't really need my help. They just need me to listen, versus maybe I need to actually give them some things to move them forward and help them problem solve a little bit. So in your notebook you have, it's called Relationship Building. If you'll read the words that are underlined, whenever I get to those, we'll go through this together. So for relationship building, it says mentoring requires interactions, but in order to be productive, mentor-mentee interactions must take place within a relationship that includes mutual trust, honesty, respect, and a joyful willingness. And then Hal Porter actually does a lot of things with mentoring. So if you're ever interested in looking at any particular books on the subject, he's got a couple of them out there. But it really does, in that joyful willingness. You know, if you think about you coming in, maybe a lot of you started when you were 22 years old, and if you feel like you're intruding on this person, it's a lot more difficult to bring that relationship and actually want to ask someone questions than if you come in and this mentor is welcoming you and honoring you and really wanting to show that support. So the joyful willingness is really an important part of that, because they already feel like sometimes they ask so many questions and they're asking everybody for everything, and they just feel bad about taking up your time. So if we can let them know that, you know, it's okay, that's what we're here for, and that we really do want to help them and support them, that helps them to feel more comfortable, and they're more likely to have that relationship and open up to you about things that are stressful for them right now. So, and that goes with the trust, the honesty, all of that is part of building that relationship and being able to maintain it throughout the time. The trust, that confidentiality piece is really important, because they do share some things that they don't want, you know, out in the building or anything like that, that are bothering them, that they may want to come and talk to you about. So making that a safe place for them to do that is an important thing. All right, so you've got guidelines for starting strong on that page that I shared with you. And I'm just going to give you a couple minutes there to go ahead and scan through that page. I want you to highlight anything that you want to that is important for you to remember. And then in just a minute, you're going to kind of tell your partner what's one thing that you're going to make sure you do to build that relationship and start building trust with your mentee when you get that first meeting. Is there anyone in particular that stands out to you as something you want to remember when you're building that relationship?
Let the mentee drive the agenda. I think it's easy to want to just kind of go in there and take charge.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that, I don't know if you guys heard her over here, so let the mentee drive the conversation. You guys ready? Let the mentee drive the conversation. It's so easy for us to go in there and we know what they need and we know what we're going to talk about, but really, unless there's something that we absolutely have to do, we want to make sure that we're meeting their needs as much as possible, and so we're letting them kind of drive those conversations. And maybe it's something that they mentioned from the time before and you say, okay, well, next time we meet, let's make sure that we talk about that. And so it really is helping to move them forward, not just what we think they need to move them forward all the time. Is there any other ones that you feel is important to remember?
Letting the mentee pick the class period that you come in and observe.
Okay.
They might have one that's more challenging, but they do want you to come in and assess to give feedback.
Absolutely.
Do really well and you want you to see that as well.
Yeah. And we have to remember too, we want to help them, but sometimes helping them is to see the good and remind them that there are good things happening, because sometimes they get so overwhelmed with everything that feels weighted down and feels wrong that we have to remember to celebrate those good things as well. So we may want to come in and just like, you rocked it. That was so fantastic, and I'm so glad I got to see that. Yes, ma'am.
With a follow-up to that, how do we cover our classes if it's not during our plan time, the one that they want us to observe?
Depends on your building a lot of times, and I'll let Andrea help me answer this if we can. A lot of times that we do it during planning time if we can make that work. Sometimes there's if you talk to your principal, they're used to sometimes that happening and having to find some coverage to help out to make those things happen. Or maybe there's a way that teams can work together to make those times available. Do you have any other suggestions that I'm not thinking of for?
Principals are very aware of the guidelines and
Yes.
that they've asked you to be the mentor for this teacher or support staff. So I would definitely talk to them and see if they can troubleshoot with you on how you can get those 3 observations in. They would probably be your best resource to see if there's something that can come.
Yeah. And they are also very aware that they have to meet these guidelines. So, it's not like it's an option at this point. We have to make sure that we're doing that part of our job for them to get relicensed. So I've never worked with a principal that hasn't been willing to help out with that. So hopefully that will be the same situation for you to help work through that. Okay? All right. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little food for thought, some things to think about as you're building these relationships. I've heard several of you comment that you actually get to work with your mentees on a regular basis. That's good. Is there anybody who doesn't have that, like maybe they're at a different building? A couple of you, so it's going to be a little more challenging to establish that relationship when you're not right there. So finding some ways to maybe make those connections will look different for that situation. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on, and this one is in the tab called Phases in your notebook if you want to follow along. All right. How many of you remember your first year? Oh, I got some noise out of that one. Okay, yeah, we all remember it very fondly, don't we? Okay. You probably, when you come back to that in your memory, you have some sort of an emotional connection because it was probably very overwhelming in a lot of ways. Different things that you didn't expect or you didn't know were going to happened during that time, and probably the whole year was just like a big blur. Yeah, maybe? Okay. Well, there's actual research about that, okay? And so this Phases of the Beginning teacher kind of explains that for you. There is an actual pattern that teachers and other professions go through, and I know this applies, I think, pretty much to any new job, just because you're so out of your element. It's very uncomfortable. Everything's new. Nothing feels normal. So you're having all of these learning curves on a daily basis come up. But this really kind of shows you what they're going to go through, and it looks different for every teacher, but it's kind of a roller coaster. We start off here in anticipation, and that kind of starts back in their student teaching whenever they're learning and they're getting excited and you know that I'm going to go tackle the world and I'm going to be better than every teacher out there because I already know what I'm doing and I've got all these really cool ideas and I've got my room decorations already ready to go and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to rock it out. Okay, so they're really excited and they spend that whole summer getting ready, getting all of their things together, making sure that they've got their lesson plan book together, and then they get to the first week of school, not with kids, but in-service days, okay? And what do we do to them on in-service days? We load them down with all of this information that for us that have been here before, it's already familiar. So there may be some new parts, but the whole entire thing is not new for us. For them, it's very overwhelming. They're hit with tons of new information and their brains, just as you know, you just can't always process and take all of that in all at this time. And so all of a sudden you're going from this, in your mind, the rock star teacher that's going to go in and it's just going to be perfect to now all these things that you didn't even know you needed to know. And so that's where that changes to survival. They didn't anticipate it and just getting through their day is consuming their time, let alone thinking to next week. They can't think that far ahead sometimes at this point. And depending on, the personality of the teacher you're working with or whatever, it can look different. Some will handle things differently than others. Some will come in a little more advanced than others and just kind of have to figure out where they're at. But you may have a teacher that's really doing well and then all of a sudden October comes and they tank and they start going down again too. So again, it dips and changes. So eventually they're going to get to disillusionment. And if you see here, that drop starts happening right about now. That's where they've been working so many hours that they can't see straight. Okay, I remember when I did that, my custodian had to kick me out every night when he left because I was always there. He's like, Vera, you got to go home now, okay? And then I would just load it up and take it home with me and I would work until I went to sleep. A lot of them are doing similar things because they're trying to learn their curriculum. A story that they have to read tomorrow, they don't know the story, so they're having to take that information in. So there's a lot of things that are going on at that time. And then now they're actually in the classroom. And so the biggest thing, do you know what the biggest thing is that's a challenge for them in the classroom? Exactly, classroom management. It's not working as smoothly as they thought it was, okay? Or they did their student teaching in the spring where the teacher already had discipline already set up, so they've never experienced how to set this classroom up and make that discipline work for them, okay? So that's where our teachers are going right now. So we really want to make sure that we are there to lift them up, to give them the support they need to help them work through these situations that are going on because they're tackling all of this at once and now they've got eyes on them. They've got their principals coming in, they've got their peer consultants or their mentors coming in, and we want to make sure that, it's okay. We understand there's a learning curve. Let's move you forward. Okay, how do we get you so you're in a good spot? Okay, so what we're going to do right now is take a little bit of a look at this. You'll turn to your next pages. Where it says page 5, beginning teacher responses to 5 stages of first year teaching. We're going to have you kind of work in groups of 3 if you can, but you can go ahead and kind of self-monitor that and figure out how to do this. But we're just going to focus on anticipation, survival, and disillusionment. Those 3 only right now because those are probably what your teachers are going to be in the most of right now. And we're just going to read through them and do a say something. So if you're in a group of 3 or 2s can adjust, what you're going to do is partner A, you can figure out your partners. Partner A will read anticipation, and then all group members will say something. So you're going to read out loud, and then everybody responds to it. Group B will then read the next one, which is survival, and then everybody responds to that. And then you'll go to group C and read disillusionment on the next page, and everybody will respond to that. Okay, and if you guys want to work in a group 4 or whatever, that's fine too.
I'm a little confused.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Are we reading both columns?
Yes, you're going to read through. So if you're partner A, you're going to read through these things that are listed there, and then everybody in your group says something about that. It's like, wow, I forgot about that, or that makes a lot of sense, or whatever it is, okay? All right, so you may go ahead and get started. So I got to talk to some different people about different things. So hopefully this brought about some things that maybe you didn't think about or that, oh yeah, I probably do need to talk about them. Does anybody want to mention anything that was a big aha for them or anything?
I'll
to say, like the conference piece, I've always helped them get ready and prepare for the conference, but I've never like modeled it or helped them within the conference. And I thought that was a great idea.
Yes, yeah, sitting down. Some of them may have high anxiety of talking to parents, especially if you are a real true college kid that just came out and you're only 22 years old and you've never had that experience. That can be really intimidating for them. So maybe you role play through it and talk about, how you're going to set it up. Give them, help them to create an agenda to keep them going through the things they need to go through. Maybe you think through how are they going to handle it if they've got a parent that's not so easy to work with. Okay, so what are they going to do for those situations, and keep their cool, make sure they're professional, all of those kinds of things. And those are coming up for most people in the next about 2 to 4 weeks or so. So that would maybe be something you start off with at the beginning too. As you're meeting your teacher and getting a feel for where they're at and what they need, you'll kind of figure out if they're still in survival or moving to that disillusionment where they're just so overwhelmed and so exhausted. So you can kind of use that as a gauge, like to kind of see, whether they're ready for something new or whether we just need to help with what we're doing right now, and kind of guide you as you help them, because we don't want to make it more challenging if we can help them too. Okay, and knowing too, like I think maybe Carlos, you're doing counseling, so there may be like IEP work that they need to know that would look different. So thinking through some of those things that they'll need right away would be the most important right now. So what do we do with our time? How are we going to make sure that we're making our conversations meaningful? And that's one thing that's really important too. It's easy to get off on side conversations and talk about what your kids are doing, or go on about something that happened last weekend. But really, we want this time, absolutely you want to share that and build that relationship, but you really want this time to be focused on them as a teacher and their professional growth. So looking through these calendars, we were going to take time to look at August, September, and October, because we won't see you again before then. But I want you to go through these calendars and look and decide what are some of the things that you think that your mentee will be ready for right now. So you're going to kind of pick one question from each category. You can highlight, do whatever you need to, so that you can kind of start thinking about what you're going to have your next conversation about, and so you can be productive. Is there anything in here that stood out as important things that you want to remember for your meetings with your teachers?
I think the whole IEP, preparing them for just the whole process of writing the teacher report pages and the process, because I think a lot of times that's missed.
Yes, absolutely. And they don't know what to do with those. And if they don't get any of the forms ahead of time, they're not sure how to go through that. So absolutely, that's an important one. And again, like if you're in a support kind of a role, so you're not like an actual classroom teacher in the classroom all of the time, that may look a little bit different too. So the behind the scenes things that we don't think about because you've been at that school for 10 years or whatever, those are sometimes the things that they'll need a lot of as well. Okay, anything else that stood out for you? Okay, well I hope that it gave you some good things to think about, some things to get your conversation started. If you're meeting or speaking with your person on a regular ongoing basis at least once a week, then you'll be able to get a lot of these things in there. And even if it's through email, maybe you can email one of the questions and just check on like, how's this going for you? So even if you don't have that opportunity for the face-to-face part of that conversation, maybe that's something that can happen. There is one correction we need to make that you might want to make on here. You see that little oval at the bottom, the ellipse if you're a math teacher? Down there it says record communication for My Learning Plan. And that's what you guys were asking about. That's changed a little bit. So I'll restate what I said a while ago. So My Learning Plan is only for that first virtual training that you did, and if you're taking this for college credit. So if you're not taking college credit, then you want to change that from My Learning Plan to the survey. The survey. And those are sent out by Amy Snodgrass, and I'll cover that again at the end. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Are the mentees also logging into My Learning Plan and recording stuff, or are we just doing it?
They don't get college credit, so you would be the only ones to do that, so you would be the ones that would record that. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I just got assigned my mentee
mentee,
Uh-huh.
so I didn't have the opportunity to do that first training. Is
Perfect.
that something I need to go back and do?
Yes, if you will talk to me, I will make sure that happens for you, okay?
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Anybody else have any questions or any thoughts? Well, I hope this gives you a good basic understanding of what you'll be looking to work with your mentees. I hope that you guys have a really positive experience this year and can really make some progress with them. And anytime that you need anything, we're always here to help and support you as you go through this too.